I thought that'd be a nice start to the video. Ooh, there's 11 of you already. Welcome to Friday Night with Sam, or Friday morning, or possibly even Saturday morning, wherever you are. I am Sam, for those of you who don't know me, and I'm feeling weirdly nervous today, actually, which is why I'm going to have skits and things, I guess. So yeah, I got loads of new subscribers recently, and there's like already 16 people here, 17. So I'm feeling nervous tonight. I don't know why. I am fully prepared for this evening, but you know. Shiny, yes, this is actually a little something from a box of goodies I bought for my next week's video, which is all about gifts for autistic people during the holidays, something like that. And I put this on my Instagram. I have to show it because it is so, I have barely put it down. We could just have 2 hours of this, right? Anyway, hello to everybody. Helen loves my hair. Why, thank you. I washed it specially for the occasion. This one is from Amazon, and I will give you all the information next week in the video. A little bit of a teaser there. Cool. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Autism Comorbidities live stream, which is a bit of a mouthful. So every time I stumble over my words, I will take a drink, I think. That sounds like a healthy drinking game, right? I don't know, but cheers, everyone. I wish I had that. I wish I could have that nearer so I wouldn't keep interrupting. Anyway, we are talking about autistic comorbidities. I really don't know the grammar on this one. Autism comorbidities, I wasn't really sure what to say. But basically, comorbidities are... Let me find my notes. Oh, this is going well already. They're things that go alongside autism, conditions that present generally higher in the autistic population than in the general population. So if you have one, you're more likely to have another. And there are various comorbidities within medicine, typically autoimmune diseases. If you have one, you are more likely to develop another. And autism is sort of one of those things that tends to go hand in hand with a lot of other things. So we're going to be discussing that tonight. Now, before I get into the meat and potatoes, I don't know, the meat. Yeah, the meat. I got a notification from YouTube that they've just enabled super stickers on. So if that's something that you're into, I don't even know what they are, but they said you can use super stickers, you know that? So super stickers, super chats, it's all super. Depending on how many people we get, it might be the only way of actually me following. So hello, everybody. Cheers, cheers, cheers. Yes, we're all quite fond of the spinner, aren't we? Yeah, and actually it has been helping me stop picking. So I think that these things are actually quite useful. Anyway, let's get into it. So I'm going to start by talking about neurodiversity in general, because even though it is all over my YouTube channel banner, I've never actually done a video on neurodiversity, the concept, what it means. I mean, I think probably people have a good idea of what it means, but let's talk a little bit about that. So it was coined by a sociologist called Judy Singer in the 90s, which is when all the cool terms were being coined. I think it was like the explosion of sociology or something like that. And basically it describes, it's sort of a political movement. It describes diversity in thought that isn't the result of a temporary or sort of curable condition, but it is a lifelong difference in the way that your brain works. Essentially, it is that your brain is wired differently. And so neurodiversity kind of encompasses a lot of things, but I'm just going to read out, I found this quotation from Judy Singer, and she says, for me, the key significance of the autism spectrum lies in its call for and anticipation of a politics of neurological diversity or neurodiversity. The neurologically different represent a new addition to the familiar political categories of class, gender, race, and will augment the insights of the social model of disability. And then she goes on about postmodernism and blah, 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 blah. So basically, what am I trying to say? It's sort of we took it for granted that certain assumptions that we all more or less see, feel, touch, and perceive the world, sort information in more or less the same way. And neurodiversity basically turns that on his head. On his head? I don't know what I'm talking about tonight. So basically, it's a way to say that no, we don't all think, see, feel, touch, taste. We're not all the same. We are indeed snowflakes. So this goes hand in hand with the social model of disability, and you'll see why I'm talking about this kind of as we get going. And so the social model of disability, just briefly, is sort of the idea that it is the barriers that society puts into place that disables people, not the conditions themselves. And I think that's extremely relevant when you're talking about autism and ADHD and all the other things that we're going to cover. So let me just see what people are saying. Yes. I'm going to get one with lights as well, because I didn't realize how much I like these things. But so if you could recommend one with lights, I would love that. Right. So let's talk about the categories of neurodiversity, because in my mind, this is something that goes together. If you're neurodiverse in one way, there's a high likelihood that you will be in another way as well. So the two categories that people talk about is, well, they're either health conditions or not health conditions. So the things that are classed as health conditions are autism, ADHD, and Tourette's. And by that, I think that they mean that they are typically diagnosed and, if not treated, then managed by medical professionals. Whereas the second category are not health conditions. See what I mean? Health conditions per se, but they're generally still lumped in under neurodiversity. So we're talking about dyslexia, dyscalculia, which I cannot say, and dyspraxia. And so they are not typically managed with a medical professional. That's more like occupational therapist, or in school it's dealt with in a different setting. But they all count under the umbrella of neurodiversity. There is another kind of neurodiversity which I looked at, which was acquired neurodiversity, which is like brain conditions which stem from injuries that could potentially go away back to a normal state. But I'm not going to be talking about that, mainly because I don't know anything about it. And as always, I am not a medical professional. I have not gained any qualifications since the last video, unfortunately. So, don't go trusting me for that sort of thing. But the thing about all these conditions, and the thing that defines them, is at its essence, deviation from the norm. And I did do a psychology degree, and we did the whole section on abnormal psychology. And that idea of being abnormal means that there is a normal and abnormal, and if you deviate, then you are pathologized, essentially. And it's kind of like a socially acceptable thing as well, because there are certain parts of autism and ADHD and Tourette's and stuff which they aren't intrinsically damaging or bad for the person, but it's about fitting into society. So deviation from the norm is pathologized. And I can't remember who I was saying this to, but it's not so long ago that psychology classed being gay as a mental disorder. And I think it was only in the 1980s that it was removed from the DSM. And so I don't want to make any giant proclamations or anything like that, but I think that with the neurodiversity movement, what we will see is we will start to move away from a very medicalized model of autism and start to see neurodiversity as more of a social movement, which is what it is on the internet for people who are involved with that. And when I looked it up, it is thought that around 20% of people would be classed as neurodivergent. So they would have one of these listed conditions. So hello. Oh, Angelique is back. Who's back that we know then? Stephanie, John, I recognize a few of your names. It is very nice to see you all again. Let me just I will show you another thing while I'm having a sip of wine. I also have one of these, which I think is rather lovely. Let's see. Kompilska? I don't know how to say your name. Kompilska. This is the fun bit when I try and pronounce everyone's names. It says, I'm new. Everybody say hello. Give them a nice wave. Sharon is new here. Awesome. Hello, Sharon. Yeah, this is my distraction technique, so I can not talk nonstop for a whole hour and possibly, you know, get a drink in. And Serena says, hi, Sam. I appreciate your videos. Hello. It's really nice. I hope you can all start to chat to each other as well as me just blabbering on for an hour or however long. Oh my gosh, we've already been at it for 11 minutes. Can you believe it? So, I don't know. I wish there was I should put a shelf here for a little background. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Right. So now, sorry, I've gone. That's really disturbing. I'm very sorry. Oh dear. Now I would like to ask you guys a question, which is, I'm kind of assuming that most of you here are autistic or possibly know somebody who is autistic or maybe just know me, like my mum. I don't even think my mum's here. But do you have a second diagnosis or condition, and how does that affect you? Please let me know in the chat ski, in the little chat. But I would like to. I actually, what's my collection of diagnoses these days? I'm trying to think. I was thinking a lot about ADHD, and I've spoken to a psychologist briefly about it, and his response was like, actually, his response was, what's your IQ? And I was like, but he sort of said, oh, it's typical for people with high IQ to have these sort of symptoms you're describing. And I don't know. So I felt like I got a bit fobbed off on that one. So I don't know if I have ADHD. I don't know. But other than that, I have PCOS and PMDD, which I can never remember the letters, which way they go around. I have celiac disease, none of which are actually neurodiversity. So when it comes to neurodiversity, it's basically I am just autistic, officially anyway. What was the question? Sorry, now I'm getting really distracted by the chat. The question was, what was the question actually? I'm not doing a very good job tonight. I'm sorry. It's been a long week. I have been ill this week as well, so I'm kind of recovering from a cold. The question was, is anyone here just autistic? I kind of assume, I feel like most autistic people that I've met tend to have some sort of comorbid condition, whether that is neurodiversity, not neurodiversity, whether that's something like ADHD or whether it is something like more of a health condition that goes along with it. So we've got one person who says, Aspie with multiple autoimmune disorders. Yeah, I have celiac disease, which actually is not, I've read some studies and there isn't a link between autism and celiac disease, but there does seem to be a link between autism and gluten sensitivity specifically. Now, gluten sensitivity is kind of like a whole different topic. And I did one of my special interests used to be gluten stuff. Gluten, yes. Because after I was diagnosed with celiac disease, of course, you can't just have a diagnosis. You have to start a blog and a movement. Yeah, gluten sensitivity does seem to be comorbid with autism, but celiac disease is not. But I do think that there are lots of autoimmune issues. Certainly, it seems to be more common. Angelique says, mine is borderline PD, personality disorder. Not a misdiagnosis, even though both have the same traits. Mine is from a childhood trauma. So both borderline BPD and bipolar and autism have very, very strongly overlapping traits. Sometimes it can be a misdiagnosis. Sometimes it that you can just have both. But in my mind, it's very difficult to tell the difference, because the way in which they're all assessed is behavioral and it's self-reported. You know, it's not like you can do a blood test for any of these things, but that would be very helpful, I suppose. So, oh, it looks like somebody called Soda Khan has lots of fun things. Prosopagnosia, which is, oh gosh, now this is taking me, that is not being able to recognize faces, I think, which I have a mild version of that. Topographical agnosia, no, I've got no idea what that is. GAD, which is generalized anxiety disorder. CPTSD, which I think is quite common in autistic people. Sensory processing disorder, which may or may not be separate. Celiac, Hashimoto's, possibly ADHD, and lots of others. I feel for you guys with this sort of combination of, I don't want to say disorders, but, you know, stuff going on. Because I have a lot of stuff going on, which is slightly different, but yeah, it piles on top, and you know, especially if you were not diagnosed with any of this as a child or as an adolescent, and then, you know, you get to your 20s and 30s and it suddenly feels like you're falling apart. So let's see what I can see. Depression, anxiety, right. Let me go back to my notes because I think we're now starting to cover a lot of that. So let's talk about anxiety and depression, because I think it's extremely common in the autistic population to suffer from chronic anxiety and depression. And I've had periods of my life when I've been really depressed, and I've had periods of my life when I've been extremely anxious, acutely anxious, you know, the sort of fear. But all through my life, there's been a low-lying anxiety and depression, which I don't know whether it's enough to count as an anxiety disorder or sort of, what's it called? The depression that won't go away. But I also do think in some ways that it is a natural response and a rational response to living in a world that is not made for us and is actively hostile to our needs. And I don't know whether that is a controversial opinion or not. I think it's rational to be I think it's rational to be depressed sometimes. If you watch the news and you see the state of the world, it can make you feel very powerless and depressed. And I mean, that's just an example. That's nothing to do with autism. That's just, you know, a rational response to stimuli, to things that are happening. And with anxiety, I mean, for example, I had a friend over last night and she brought someone that I didn't know, and I actually thought we had a really nice time. You know, we were chatting, I hadn't seen her for a while, and afterwards I got this huge wave of anxiety, and I was suddenly just, because I've stopped masking so much, because I've stopped trying to be really excessively polite and excited, and I've stopped trying to be someone I'm not, I actually feel like I get more anxious about things because I just have no idea whether I was really inadvertently rude. I have no idea. And so thinking about things like that, every time you meet someone socially, constantly going over, I mean, that is a symptom of anxiety, these sort of ruminating thoughts, worrying that you've offended people. But if you are not masking and you are just trying to be yourself, it's very difficult to know when you don't have that kind of natural ability to just understand what's going on socially, you know. And the funny thing is, it doesn't matter that nothing awful happened. There were no awkward, I don't think anything bad happened, but my brain won't allow me to believe that I had a successful social interaction. So that's kind of an example of the low level anxiety that kind of permeates my life. And depression, well, I have PMDD, so it's sort of like once a month I will get a depressive episode for a couple of days. And so that's kind of like a little bit different. But again, I see some of certainly the depression that I've experienced as a rational response. What do you think? Do you think that these things can be rational and that they're not always just, oh, you just have a chemical imbalance in the brain, we'll give you the SSRIs and it'll fix it? Because I know that absolutely medication can help, and that's not what I'm saying at all, but the cause of it, I don't necessarily think is always just something that happens in isolation in your brain. I think it's a response to what's happening in our lives and society. Right, let's get some of these comments and my wine. Let's see. We were at sodas. Stephanie says the only comorbids I'm aware of would be depression, anxiety, but those are really common in general. Yes, they are, and I think they're also more common my generation and below, as we grow up into a increasingly hostile world. Depression, anxiety, autism, PTSD, anxiety, and diabetes. I don't know that. Oh, it's these chats are going all over the place now. Gosh, you guys have been busy chatting and I've been busy waffling. This is very hard to keep track. You need to super chat. Somebody needs to super chat me. Right, so ASD, no official second diagnosis, but dyspraxia, alexithymia, anxiety, OCD, PDA, and probably ADHD. Yeah, that's like how I feel about things. Like, I don't have an official diagnosis of dyspraxia, but I am extremely clumsy. So yeah, dyspraxia is sort of under the Neurodiversity banner. I don't actually know that much about it, but I do know that I have certain traits, I guess. And I was illustrating this to my friend last night, and I was saying, okay, I used to do gymnastics, and so if it's just me on a mat, I have reasonably good control over myself, and I can pick up dance routines very easily, but I will walk into the door frame all the time, or I'll hit my shoulders on things, and I'll hit my hips on things. And I think that is very common for autistic people. It's something to do with poor proprioception. Why are all these words so hard to say? Is it me, or is it just these words? They're not very friendly, are they? Yeah, what's the other thing I wanted to talk about? So dyspraxia, yeah. But no, the funny thing was, yeah, I knew there was a reason for that anecdote. Dyspraxia. So I was demonstrating walking into the door frame, and then as I turned around to to come and sit back down, I basically just tripped over the steam mop unintentionally, which was a very good demonstration of my poor, just generally poor coordination. But I don't understand how I can be good at gymnastics. I mean, I'm old now for gymnastics, but I don't understand how I can be good at gymnastics and extremely clumsy and just generally poor at that kind of thing. That was a waffle, wasn't it? I'm trying to catch up on these chats now. Face and place blindness. Yeah, the face blindness thing is, it's not really something that you get diagnosed, I don't think. Although you could get diagnosed if you had a brain injury to that part of the brain and then you have face blindness after it. But in terms of an autistic person, just saying, I don't remember faces, it's really embarrassing. And people just hate you for it. When back in my highly masking years, when I organized, can you believe it, social meetups just for the fun of it. Yeah, I don't know what I was thinking. I had somebody who had come to my house several times before, and they came to my house for the meetup, and I opened the door, and I'd had many conversations with her, and I'm like, oh, do I know you? She just looked at me and she said, I've been to your house before. Like, yeah, but And I didn't know at the time, I didn't know about autism, I didn't know about any of this stuff. And it's just like you feel awful and embarrassed, but you're also like, the thing is though, I could tell you, even now, I could tell you the whole conversation that we had. It was about publishing, and we had this whole conversation. But I looked at her face and I thought, yeah, I think you look familiar. So the face blindness thing is kind of tricky. There's a lot of people who've said face blindness in the comments as well. SPT, dyspraxia. Have we talked about synesthesia yet? No, but actually I never even thought about that when I was writing my notes. Synesthesia. So it's also very common with autistic people, as is pretty much everything. Like everything that can go wrong with your brain or body is probably common in autistic people. So synesthesia is basically I'm trying to think of how to describe it on the hoof, where your sensory integration is atypical. I would say that's probably the best way of doing it. Typically, it might be like certain colors are associated with certain numbers, or months, or June tastes like the color yellow or something like that. Does June taste? No, that was a poor example. Well, it's not a true example, but people do experience things like that. For example, for me, the month of November is dark purple with a hint of brown, and I have no idea why. It just is. So synesthesia is basically just a very weird way of experiencing sensory input, I think. And because obviously sensory processing goes together with autism, I think that's probably why it's more common. But they did do a study actually, or was it? I can't remember. I think I remember reading a study that they did where people of my generation might remember those Fisher-Price fridge magnets that they had in the, I guess, 80s or 90s. And they had like numbers and letters, and you put them on the fridge and make rude words, when you're 6. Like bum. Sorry. I'm saying bum on a live stream now. And they found, anyway, the study showed that a lot of people with synesthesia actually associated the colors with the Fisher-Price magnets, because they were all different colors, and so people would say that the number 1 was an orange, for example, and so it would be consistent with that. And I thought that was a very cool experiment, and I actually do remember those ones, but I haven't tested that. There are resources that you can go to test it. I think there is a big study being done, or this was maybe a few years ago because I'm out of date, I guess. So yeah, the synesthesia thing is very interesting, and that's something that I think has not been studied enough. Nothing's been studied enough, basically. We need to be funding all this. We need to work out what's going on in our brains. Right, who we got now? Dyspraxia and ADHD. Yes, dyspraxia we've talked briefly about. I don't have much helpful things to talk about dyspraxia. I don't know that much about it. There is a certain limit to how much I can research for these things. I would love to research more. So Angelique talks about autism and BPD, and she's confident in the assessment. That's good. That's good, because there's a lot of people who get diagnosed and they think, well, I don't know. It doesn't sound like me, but surely the professionals know. But I don't agree that they do. So we're talking about asthma and eczema, all these genes being linked. Sensory processing, OCD, anxiety, depression, ARFID, which I think is restricted feeding or something like that, and cybophobia. I don't know what that is, actually. Cybophobia. John says you had severe depression, later became recurrent, and resolved it with antidepressants. Gary says 5 out of 5 live streams of yours. Cool. Oh yes, I can't say this, but Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is a sort of, Do you know what? I'm just going to Google it because I am not a medical professional. It's basically hypermobility and connective tissue disorders, yes, which applies to a lot of autistic people as well. And it's the sort of thing where basically, you know, like you can do that. Like, let's do freaky tricks on the internet now. So I don't actually have a diagnosis of that. I did a screener and I came up just short for it. But since having a child, my joints and everything have got very loose, and I've realized the extent of my hypermobility. So, for example, I had to stop doing yoga because it was making me too flexible, and that's not good. Massively common in autistic people. Yes, so I can actually, if I were to stand, I'm not going to move it now because we're being civilized, aren't we? If I were to stand with my legs straight, I would be able to put my hands flat on the floor, and that I'm now more flexible than I was when I was like a child or a teenager, which seems very strange. But yeah, I don't know whether that's related to Ehlers-Danlos, loss, because I know that typically people have very like smooth skin like a baby and look very young, and I'm like, I don't know. But you know, a lot of people would be able to pinch their skin and stretch it, and I can't do that. So I don't think this has just turned into me being like, I have this and I have this. I'm sorry. What are we talking about? Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Yes. So there are various different types of it, but that is a massive comorbid for autistic people. Auditory processing disorder. See, now these sort of things, sensory processing, auditory processing, to me, that is part of autism that you can be diagnosed with separately. It's very confusing. You can be diagnosed with it separately. So you can just have sensory processing disorder and not be autistic. But the sensory processing stuff was a big part of my autism diagnosis. So it is extremely complicated. But auditory processing disorder, is basically the root of my struggles with hearing and sound, because I've had my hearing tested many times in my life, and it turns out that I have very good hearing. But however, I cannot hear anything. So if I were to go into an empty hall, for example, and talk to one person, that would be fine. As soon as there is any other noise and echoing around like that, I can't hear. And it's not about the volume, it's about the layers of complexity. So auditory processing basically makes you feel like you're deaf, and you know, people will say something and you go, what? And they'll say it louder, but louder doesn't help, because it's not about volume, it's about the interference of sounds and not being able to pick out the either focusing your attention or just blocking everything else out. I still don't really understand this part of my own mind, but it's the reason I hate talking on the phone, because I feel like I can't hear properly. So that to me is one of the more disabling aspects of my particular flavor of autism, because it means that there's no point in me doing certain things. There's no point in me doing certain social things, because I sit there and like, it's not just because I don't know what to say that I don't join in. It's because I can't hear if there's a big group. So I would prefer to do certain things. So yeah, that one definitely limits what I can do in the world, I suppose. But I don't know if there are any earplugs or ear defenders that help with that. Musicians' earplugs do help a lot, and I do use them because I like to still be able to hear, but not the general chitter-chatter. So anyway, that was a bit of a tangent, wasn't it? Stephanie says, I saw a study showing just half of the studied deceased autistic brains had signs of possible autoimmune on the brain, WBC present. I don't know what WBC is, but sounds sciencey. Some studies suggest a link between stress and autoimmune. Yeah, there's just so much we don't know about this. And while, I mean, I feel like so much research is being done in finding a cure, finding like why autistic people are so weird. No studies are being done on that, but like mice, you know, I'm not gonna say poo transplants again. I'm not gonna talk about this again. You know how I feel. But you know, all these studies are being done, and it's not really about the things that maybe matter most to autistic people. And I think that part of the reason I wanted to do this topic, other than you guys suggested it and wanted me to do it, was that the health things and the comorbid conditions that go along with autism really severely like they really impact our quality of life more than just being autistic in a neurotypical world. But these additional things that are typically piled on, you know, those are the things that make life hard. You know, it's not intrinsically hard in some ways to be autistic. It's sort of lonely and frustrating and stressful, but it's like, I don't know if I'm explaining this very well. Anyway, let's see what Jordan says. If somebody constantly struggles with friends and social situations, then it's not a surprise they may develop anxiety and depression, even when things start going right. That's very much what I think as well. OCD is awful. I don't know if Sandy struggled with OCD's behaviors with her autism. I definitely have OCD traits. That when I was diagnosed, that's the word. I'm struggling with finding my words today. You can see sometimes my brain like just ticks slightly off kilter, doesn't it? They did a screener for everything. So I had like 500 questions, and it was like, do you want to burn people in a fire? That kind of thing. I'm like, no. I don't know what that was trying to work out. But I did score, I'm just trying to think I don't remember being tested for ADHD, which is ironic, actually. It's the only thing I don't remember. But I definitely scored somewhat for OCD traits. I scored somewhat for depressive traits. But with the OCD, the difference is that, you know, I have the obsessive thoughts. I don't have the compulsions. So that's the sort of compulsion to do something on the basis of it will make these obsessive thoughts go away. Whereas I have obsessive thoughts, but nothing I do doesn't make them go away, you know, which I looked into, and I believe that there is a term, something like pure obsessive. I'm a pure obsessive. I wouldn't like to just diagnose myself. I don't really think that it impacts me on that sort of level, but it's very hard to know where autism stops and where these sort of traits start, because unless you are really understanding your reasoning, a lot of autistic behaviors, liking things just so, can seem like OCD behaviors. You know, you like things lined up in a particular way or in a certain order. It doesn't feel right, and that can look very, very like an OCD behavior. But the reasoning behind it is different, which is why, I mean, OCD is just another one of those things that people might get diagnosed with instead of autism. And it's really like all of these things, they seem to be, they're all part of neurodiversity. They're all part of the human condition in some way. But I feel like the current system is very poor at labeling and making really good distinctions, because they're based kind of like on criteria that we started off with. And it takes a very long time to filter through psychology. I mean, they've only just, like the DSM-5 is the most recent one, and they've only just kind of consolidated autism before, because they had Asperger's, they had, I can never remember the abbreviations for it, PPNOD, something like that, not otherwise something. Gosh, I'm really sorry. I can't remember anything tonight. But the various different typed categories of autism. And then they found that when they had different people diagnosing patients, everybody came up with a different diagnosis. It was completely invalid, and that was the reason why they decided to put it all together under autism spectrum condition. My opinion is that it needs to even take a step further back to come under neurodiversity, because especially when you look at autism and ADHD, part of the reason why I'm finding it so hard to work out or think, do I have ADHD, is because of the overlap, the overlap with executive functioning skills, the overlap with attention. You know, there is so much that is common to both. So it's like, where does one start and the other one, no, where does one end and the other one begin, you know? So the problem with the problem with science, the problem with the way that research is done, is that nobody takes the step back and looks at the bigger picture. Which wasn't that one of the questions in the AQ? Do you get obsessed? Do you get bogged down by the details? But it's all very well having these details, everybody working on their little patch of land, and then you zoom out and it's just made a mess. It hasn't made a beautiful mosaic of something. I don't know if that analogy works. And I think what we get when we look at the state of the diagnostic criteria is kind of like a bit of a mess, to be honest. So, that was another bit of a long one. So I was talking about OCD, wasn't I? Yes, PDD-NOS. Thank you. That was very good. Right. You've all scrolled all the way down again. Do you know what? Like, I am really, really way behind on this chat. Have a spinner while I look. let's all take a little spin break. Right. So Stephanie, I think I've missed a lot of chats. I'm really sorry, guys. Stephanie says, does anyone here take the steps going down one at a time really slowly? I do that, and I hold onto the banister because I can't walk downstairs without holding onto the banister. I will fall down the stairs. Have I ever fallen down the stairs? I don't know if I have, but I just can't walk downstairs quickly. You know what I have done is slipped down a slope and hit my head. Yes, I'm clumsy. But so I really hate walking down slopes. This is why I'm very well suited to living in the Netherlands, really. You guys should all move here. It's flat. Yeah, I was wearing a big hiking backpack. It was when I was working for a summer camp, working at a summer camp. As a camp counselor, you can just see me as a peppy leader, can't you? I had a huge rucksack on my back, and I was at the back of the group of children, and I had a water bottle attached, and it was kind of swinging, and the water bottle just was heavy enough that it pushed me off balance, and I fell onto my knee first, and then I fell onto my head, which is where I got I have a scar somewhere here, but like, it was pretty awful because I went like this, ripped out a bunch of hair. Ooh, yeah, I've been to hospital for these minor things quite a lot of times, actually. So I am really, really rather clumsy. So not diagnosed with autistic processing disorder, auditory processing disorder, but so many autistics have it, and I relate. And I think, yeah, I don't, again, it's unclear to me where the line is between what is a disorder and what is just part of autism. And obviously every autistic person experiences the world differently. But it's just, yeah, it's very, very complicated. I'm going to say that over and over again for the next, hour. So Gary says, I'm mad. I started walking in and out of the door frame to improve my spatial awareness. maybe I should practice then. Maybe that's what I'm missing, is just a little bit of practice. What is it? Oh no, I'm not going to do that. See, this is the thing. I think of random things that relate to the thing that I was just saying, and then I'm attempt to quote them, and then I remember that I can't quote them. My brain has made the connection. So, you know, this is very entertaining for you all, I'm sure. I'm not diagnosed with dyspraxia, but this is, you know, when you see my videos when they're edited, this is all edited out. So if I do have a day like this when I can't talk, you guys don't see it. And then everyone goes, well, you don't look autistic because you can talk just fine. Yeah. When did dyspraxia become an official diagnosis? Well, in the 80s, I had a friend who had dyspraxia, I think. Yeah, she had dyspraxia. So it must have been an official diagnosis in the 80s. And the 80s is now 3 decades ago. And that was in the UK. I think she had something else. I can't even remember. Face blindness, clumsy and uncoordinated. We're all just listing things that are wrong with me. Zizazeremy says, I have a wine too. So cheers, Zizazeremy. I give special cheerses to people that I know in real life. Right, let's see if I can catch up, because there are a lot of chat messages. Synesthesia, we've talked about. So Cyan Moon says, OMGGG, one of my most embarrassing moments involved saying, do I know you, to someone I knew well. Yes, I can relate. Totally can relate. I didn't recognize him because I met him out of context. Yeah. I had somebody come up to me in a cafe once and be like, hi, Samantha. And I'm like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Did not know who they were. I couldn't even see if their face looked familiar. And then we'd literally, like, that morning been, I think it was like a mortgage advisor. We'd sat there for 2 hours having a discussion. Don't remember. Oh, I wish people knew that it's not because I don't care, though. I try. I spend my life trying, and that's why I'm always tired. So, Rainbow Elemental says November is blood red, and I have to disagree with you on that one. I don't see how November can be blood red unless, like, maybe October. I don't know. Blood red. Wow, that's a very interesting view of the world. See, I get very upset when people disagree with my synesthesia, because I'm like, no, you're wrong. This is not how the world is. Anyway, the letters. Gary says, wow, 52 in the chat. Yeah, 52 people. It's cool, isn't it? I'm feeling a lot less. I was feeling very nervous when I began, but I'm feeling happier now. It's probably the spinners. Flying Falcon says those magnets were still around in the early 2000s. So this is the early learning, what did I say? No, Fisher-Price ones, the magnets. So there are potentially like decades of people who've all been exposed to these same magnets and might all have the same color, number, letter sort of combinations in their head, which is, I don't know, I guess it's like, it's a shared culture almost, isn't it? Jordan says, synesthesia for me, there isn't really a difference between textures and flavors. Or I have really strong texture sensors in my mouth. That sounds really unpleasant, actually. I don't know if that's a nice thing or not. My synesthesia for me is a nice thing, usually. It's just like an association, but having a texture in your mouth sounds gross to me. But I was a very fussy eater as a child, so I'm still a bit about texture in my mouth. Yeah. Everybody in chat liked the stream, says Bert. Yes, everybody give it a thumbs up right now. I'm going to take a break to sip some wine, and you take a break to give me a thumbs up if you're having fun. I hope you're all having a nice time on this Friday night. It's 9 o'clock now here in the Netherlands. Rainbow Elemental said, did synesthesia affect your naming of your child? Mine did. No, actually. Having a name that's pronounceable in the Netherlands did affect the naming of my child, because you can't have anything that begins with J, because Julia becomes Julia, and the Dutch will pronounce things in different ways. So no, actually, it didn't. I'm not telling you what my child's name is. I'm not telling you the internet that. Flying Falcon says 52 likes or I'll eat something. I'll figure out what. What does that even mean? You'll eat something. Eat a plane. You like planes. Right. People getting error messages sending super chats and stickers. I'm really sorry. Rainbow Elemental says, Yo Bendy Sam. Yeah, maybe I should rename myself Yo Bendy Sam. I'd certainly get more views if I did some videos of me bending parts of my body. Like, check out my elbows. That's nice. That's very cool. Any medical professionals on here? Do you think I have Illidan loss syndrome? I definitely have hypermobility though, and this one as done before. All my joints, yeah. Right, yes, we're talking about all the bendy stuff now. Allergies. I don't know if we got time to talk about allergies. Different types of EDS are due to stretchiness and different types of collagen. Wow, you learn something new every day. I didn't even know there were different types of collagen. So, right. Alan says, just had a thought, comorbidity bingo, anyone? Maybe that's one for the holidays. We'll do that at Christmas. How about that? We'll play bingo. No? Anyone? Right. I'm just gonna have to scroll. Sorry, there's too much. Otherwise, I'm just gonna be here getting all overwhelmed by the things. Super chat me if you want me to see it. Sadly, I don't know if that's supposed to say sad. No, sadly. Does anyone relate to PTSD due to bullying at school? Ooh, bullying at school. That is a huge topic for another time, which I think I'll probably do in the new year. I'll probably do a live stream on that in the new year because I want to do one over Christmas because I think that'll be festive, jolly, or Hanukkah, So yeah, maybe I'll do something on that. But you can get PTSD due to bullying, and I think autistic people are more susceptible to it because we are more sensitive in general. And I think smaller things leave us more likely to have a larger psychological reaction, or at least that's my experience. It wasn't due to bullying for me, but I had a head injury when I was about 22 or so. And it was classified as a minor head injury from a medical standpoint, but it gave me some significant PTSD for, well, 6 months to a year was at least the kind of recovery time. So yeah, I think that autistic people are more susceptible to PTSD, and I think that unfortunately being susceptible to trauma of that kind, then you go to try and get a diagnosis, and they say, well, all these symptoms are related to your trauma, and actually they might be related to both your trauma and your autism. So that's another one. But yeah, I think bullying and like friendships at school is a good topic for another time. It's kind of a painful topic to talk about though, isn't it? It's like sometimes I like being all jolly on my channel, and it's like, yeah, it's painful to talk about. And I think I don't remember being bullied, like singled out bullied. But there are reasons why, because I spent so much effort camouflaging, and I got really good at it to avoid being bullied. So I spent a lot of energy not being bullied. And then you start feeling like you have to keep doing this in order for there not to be terrible consequences. So I'm not saying that that is worse. Everybody has their own, everyone is allowed to have their own history and their own trauma and stuff, and I don't think that any two people react the same to the same situation or anything like that. But I think a lot of autistic people are bullied, and the ones that aren't probably are a bit like me in that it's, you know, like I would have been bullied if I'd been myself at school. Because, like, you know, I was pretty weird anyway, even with all the masking. And now I'm just like, yeah, there's a lot of strange things going on in my head. I was not like the other kids, and I knew it. That's really the thing. Anyway, we're talking about hearing now. Electronic hearing protection has little microphones and speakers. You can adjust the volume. Do you mean like noise cancelling headphones, or I suppose electronic hearing protection? That's what you mean by that. Stephanie says the phone is annoying because you're not actually hearing their voice, just certain tones transmitted, and you already knowing them makes your brain recognize their voice, not what we're used to hearing. Don't actually know. I don't know what you're saying there, but yeah, like the phone is just it's awful from all perspectives, really. And speaking over Skype is slightly better, I think. Ideally, we have a situation where I'm in right now, which is where I have a one-way conversation. And then you guys talk to me and I squint and trying to read your comments. And then I say, no, I just carry on my monologue. It'll be fine. People talk differently on the phone. Yes, that they do. Right, noise cancelling headphones with a focus on voice mode are good for removing whirring sorts of background noise, but not so much if the background noise is voices. Okay, so yeah, if you're in like a noisy scenario, like on a plane, that's a very good example because planes are extremely loud, but it's not generally chatter, so that would be a good one. I did try out some Bose ones, but they actually broke. This was a few years ago. They were quite good for plane, but if you've seen I have an autism life hacks video, and I have some pink noise cancelling headphones on there. Those are like 50 quid or something. You know, they're not the 200, 300 category or price category, but they have actually been really, really good. And they just have a little like on-off switch for the active noise cancelling, and then it's just headphones, so you can play music or not play music. But I mean, the problem I have is that if I'm in a situation where I do need to interact with people, like I need to ask questions in a shop, or, you know, I need to communicate with people, and then there's still a lot of noise, that's really the difficulty. Because it's great, sure, you can block out all the sounds, but we've all got things to do in this world. We've all got places to be and things to sort out, and it makes it really hard to communicate. So yeah. Right, Annabella says, was diagnosed, I like your name, by the way, Annabella, it's a very beautiful name. Diagnosed with generalized anxiety, social anxiety, depression, OCPD, and CPTSD before autism was even mentioned as an option. Also, asthma, allergies, IBS, and probably undiagnosed CAS, which I don't know what it is, but that's also quite a heavy load for you, I think. Sorry, I'm fidgety today. Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about how it interacts and how it's sort of like layers of complexity is what I wrote in my notes. So when you talk about layers of complexity, you know, you say, well, I am autistic. This is what I say on my channel. I talk about autism, and this is what the experience of being autistic is like. But then let's say you have, I don't know, OCD, for example. At times in your life, OCD and autism will interact in different ways. And so you're not going to act the same. You're not going to behave. You're not going to react the same way at every single time. So it makes it really hard actually to communicate your needs when your needs are constantly changing. And I think that also runs the risk of making people around us think that we are being picky or oversensitive or arrogant or all of these things, because they don't listen to us and maybe don't understand that how you're feeling day to day might change, you know. So for example, for me, there are some days when I will talk and I will be so fluent and I will just get into the flow and I'll be able to do this. And there are other days where I will stumble over my words. And it's the same thing when I try and speak Dutch, you know. Some days it will just, someone will talk to me and I'll respond and it'll be like I am completely fluent in Dutch. And other days I can't even count to 5, you know. And so when you have something, a condition that varies, intersects with your other conditions, you end up with just, people don't know how to, not how to treat you, but what you need, because what you need varies from day to day. And especially like if you have, like me, PCOS and PMDD, so very sensitive to my own body's hormonal changes. You know, if you meet me at one time in the month, you might think I'm a completely different person to if you meet me at another time of the month. And it's just like, there are some days when I feel completely fine and I feel completely healthy. And there are other days where I feel, I sit on the sofa and I think I actually feel disabled. I feel like this is completely disabling me today. And it's very difficult for people to grasp that, actually, that autism seems harder on some days, and all of these different things, they're not constant. They're not just as they are. Everything is in flux, yeah, everything's in motion, and everything builds upon each other. And not only do you have all the diagnoses, but then you have outside stresses as well. So maybe there's a stress with your job or with your children or something like that, you know. And just life is so complicated for us, I think. So let's find some more chats, because there are lots of you chatting, which is lovely. But it's difficult for me to keep up. Right, Stony says, don't forget about schizophrenia. I went in to get my autism ADHD diagnosis and they gave me schizophrenia, ADHD, and in a conversion disorder to explain my sensory issues. I think, well, possibly even dementia, because people with autism usually get their geriatric diseases sooner as well. Well, that's something to look forward to, isn't it? Yeah, as I said before, I don't know if you were in the chat at that point, but the overlap between these conditions is significant and not very helpful if your diagnostician is not experienced or maybe not very knowledgeable about presentation in different people, like autism in women, or, you know, anything deviating from, as in like deviating from the norm of the abnormal. So yeah, I don't know. I sometimes wonder whether I should just get a psychology degree or a further psychology degree just to like be able to talk more about this with slightly more credentials or something. But I kind of enjoy all my disclaimers where I can just talk about stuff on the internet and people will listen, apparently. Right. Gary says 5 to 16-year-olds, junior school. Oh, we're talking about bullying here. Bullying. Right, you guys said, have I reached the end of the chat? No, I haven't. It's just refreshed again. Oh my gosh. Oh. Right. Do you know what? I scroll down, I think I've reached the end of the chat, and then all your messages pop up. and then I can't find where I was. Oh dear. You guys are chatting so much. I hope you are having fun with each other, at least. Because I'm completely confused now. Well, Stephanie says dyspraxia was 1937. Dyspraxia became widely, or it was coined, according to a very preliminary Google search. So thank you for that one. When the Brain Can't Hear, Unraveling the Mystery of Auditory Processing Disorder was a helpful book for me. They released it on Audible. There's an irony, isn't there? That's the issue they first noted in my special ed docs. Okay, cool. That's interesting. When the Brain Can't Hear, I'll have to find a written version of that, because I can't listen to audiobooks because I completely tune out. I really struggle. I can read a book, but I can't listen to one. Anyway, Rainbow Elemental says, I can't even recognize my own kids when coming out of school. Have to recognize their clothes and bag. Yeah. Or their hairstyle or something. I've just seen Stephanie's comment. It's probably the spinners. Nice save. Yeah, it's going to get worse and worse as the glass goes down. Oh, sorry. We're just getting the focus back up. For those of you who are new here, this is my new spinner that I'm pretty pleased about. It's nice and heavy as well because it's metal. It's not, the inside is plastic, but the outside is metal. You see. And you can unscrew these, and then you can make it, and it wobbles, and it's kind of like a nice wobble. I don't know. I'm really like, I picked these because I thought I'd get a variety of stuff for this video next week, and I'm just like, I haven't put this thing down. Right, let's go back to your chat skis. Have I said all of what I said? It's been over an hour. Can you believe I've been talking for over an hour again? I was talking about like the overlapping complexities, and yeah, I mean, in terms of what we're talking about, the struggles of having, I guess, more than one diagnosis, and it's not always just related to the brain functioning. It can be related to the body and health conditions and certain disabilities, and certainly the invisible disabilities are harder for people to understand. You know, if you are walking down the street and you have an obvious aid like a stick or a wheelchair, people are able to put that in their category of this person needs my help. And I'm not saying that by any means that disabled people are treated well in general. I don't think that they are. But it is a more obvious indicator that a provision needs to be made. Of course, these things aren't always done. And there are various, I'm just trying to think of like people to follow on social media, like the disabled advocates. I can't remember, but Agony Auti definitely does a lot about wheelchair access when she's traveling on trains and stuff like that. What was I saying? Oh, but invisible disabilities, that is really a lot harder to explain to people, and people get scared. People, if you have a meltdown, they don't know you're autistic because you don't look autistic. What does it look? It looks like someone might be having a violent attack, you know? So having additional things piled on top of something that is already pretty stigmatized in this world is it's difficult, and it's isolating and alienating, and it basically sucks. The moral of this story is that sometimes our bodies don't work very well, but it's also difficult to, when we're talking about invisible disabilities, people have to judge you based on your behavior. They can't see inside your brain. They can't see what is happening. And so your behavior doesn't always tell the truth. Tell the truth about what's happening. So for example, for me, sometimes when I'm extremely distressed, I will be very, very quiet and have no expression on my face. And that doesn't mean I'm not distressed, but nobody knows that I need help, which I guess is why they consider autism a communication disorder of some kind, or, you know, impaired communication. But, you know, so for example, I have incredible pain at certain times of the month related to polycystic ovaries and things like that. And, but it interacts. So because of the way that I express pain, which is sometimes the more painful it gets, the harder it is for me to express pain, because I'm focusing on holding it together. I'm focusing on controlling the pain. I don't know if that makes any sense. And I'm not focusing on making the correct facial expression for ouch or making a noise for it. I'm trying to retreat into myself to manage my own pain. So I mean, that's problematic for if you have an accident somewhere and you're in a lot of pain and you don't know how to express it, or other people think, well, you are silent and still, you're fine. It can be quite problematic. I don't know if any of that makes any sense to you guys. So we've got a lot. Jess says, you live in the Netherlands. Yes, I do. I do. It is pretty cool. Yes, just like me. Yellow Flame Dancing. What are your thoughts on cannabis and autism? Oh, what am I allowed to say on the internet? I don't. I'm going to say something in the abstract here. I think there's no reason to think that the effects that cannabis has on people with depression, anxiety, pain, and all these kind of things, there's no reason to think why this wouldn't also be beneficial for people with autism. And I am generally very pro legalization, research, and taxation of drugs. I think that the restriction of the drugs which we call illegal are for historically dubious reasons. Like the drugs that were made illegal in the States tended to come with a rise in a new bunch of scary immigrants. So heroin was made illegal when there was a lot of Chinese immigrants? And so it was like the drug of choice. And like, obviously the Mexicans, the scary Mexicans with their marijuana and all of these kind of things. So generally I am quite open to the idea of drugs being beneficial. I know that obviously cannabis has been used for millennia by humans. Humans have been consuming hallucinogens for also a very long time. So those are my thoughts. And I think I managed to keep that so I wouldn't get in trouble. I don't know if you're allowed to talk about drugs on YouTube. Are you? Not sure. Rainbow Elemental says, my super chat doesn't work. Yeah, well, this is something that apparently a lot of people have had problems with. Listen, if you want to support me, I have a Ko-fi. Actually, that was something I wanted to talk about. So I can't remember who. Somebody, the guy who lives in Costa Rica, John actually has been my first video commissioner, and he has on Ko-fi commissioned a video on the topic of his choice, which is a new option that I'm giving. So if you have something that you really want me to do a video on, I will research it and I will make it into a video and I will dedicate it to you. But here, I'll stick the link in the chat if you're interested in that sort of thing, because I don't know, maybe you want me to do a video on something or other, and you just can't be bothered to research it yourself. So I'm your girl for that one. Anne Lou says, you're in the Netherlands. You're actually kind of close to where I live in the west of Germany. Ah, guten Tag. Actually, no, it's guten Abend here. Are you German, Anne Lou? Anna Lou, I think it probably is if you're German. Anna Lou. Yes, my middle name is also Louise, named after my German great-grandmother, Louisa, spelt the German way. Anyway, this is all by the by. It is 9:30 already, and there's still 50 of you watching, which I am just very grateful for. It's very kind of you to spend your Friday evening watching. Jess says, can you speak Dutch fluently? Depends on the day, actually. I don't know if you asked this before I already answered, but yeah, there are some times when I can just engage in conversation and it comes very naturally, and there are some times when I just stumble over my words. I was trying to explain to my kid's nursery teacher that he's starting to count in Dutch, and I was saying, he says 1, 2, and then I forgot the word for 3 in Dutch, which is, what did I say? I said tree. But the problem is, though, I've learned German in my life. I've also learned French. Like, the languages are starting to get real confusing in there. So I don't really speak Dutch on a day-to-day basis because I don't have really Dutch friends or anything like that. So I do not get the practice, basically. And I do not have enough people who are willing to put up with me talking badly at them. But I do read and write conversationally fluently, if that makes sense, not fluently. Right. Flying Falcon says, did you suffer from any TBI? I don't know what TBI is, actually. PCOS. We have talked about PCOS somewhat. PCOS is related to, well, it's related to insulin, it's related to diabetes. And generally women with PCOS tend to find it very easy to put on weight, which I control with a low carb diet, which I'm really badly off the wagon at the moment, which is why none of my clothes fit me. So PCOS, I mean, the problem is I was literally told by the doctor, you have PCOS, go away and come back when you can't have children, which was not very helpful because there were no tips on management. So, but yeah, it's very common. It's 20% of people, 20% of women are supposed to suffer from PCOS, and I do say suffer from because I do feel like I suffer. But it just doesn't seem like people are being given very good information. So yeah, I really just control it with carbohydrate restriction. And like theoretically, yeah, I could go on the pill, but I don't want to. Anyway, chatty. You were talking about Munster. Cool. Maybe we should have a meetup one day. Wouldn't that be fun? Like a Germany meetup. I don't know. Go to Düsseldorf or somewhere. Oh, actually, when I get to 10,000 subscribers, I can do meetups in the YouTube studios, so we can go to Berlin or London or somewhere like that. That would be so cool. But why would autistic people want to meet up with each other when we can talk on the internet? I'm kidding. Right, more wine, more spinning. Spin. There we go. Actually, maybe we should do this one as well while I look at the chats, because I really do enjoy these ones. Yellow Flame Dancing says, hey, how did the music conductor earplugs work? I'm very curious. I don't know if you're talking to me or talking to someone else, but they worked pretty they work pretty nicely. I put them in when I go to the supermarket, because I realized that a lot of the reason why I hate going to the supermarket is the noise, because it's extremely noisy in there. And I find them so helpful because I can still hear foam ones muffle. I find it very muffly. So Flying Falcon says airliners are not loud. I disagree. It's extremely loud on planes, unless airliners is like not the same as a commercial plane. I don't know. We're now talking about where our grandmothers used to live. My grandmother used to live in Burg Steinfurt when I went to visit Munster. My grandparents used to live in Berlin, actually. So there you go. They used to live in Dahlem in Berlin, which is a suburb. Jess, does anyone else find it hard to speak when there's a lot of background noise? Yes, I do. Right, Gary says, I know it can be I think you're talking about bullying here. I know it can be a dark subject, but your live stream is educational and good awareness of autism. It can be a support group, like autistic people chatting and relating. Thanks for answering my question on bullying. Yeah, I know. It's difficult though, because it's not like I don't want to talk about sad things. I don't want to stir up too much in people, and I think things like bullying, it doesn't really go away, the trauma of that. I don't think so. People I know that are my age that were bullied at school, they're still affected by it. So yeah, I just didn't want to make it like super depressing for everybody, basically. So loads more chatty chats. I'm probably going to have to, I'll stay another 10 minutes, but other than that, it's going to be way too long. So I hope you guys appreciate this. What it would be really cool is if I could set it up somehow to have like nice, soothing, stimmy effects over the top of me. So there's like a frame. I don't know. Can you do that? Can you do that on lives? Anna Lou says, for me, I was diagnosed with social anxiety before being diagnosed with autism, and the psychologist told me to just go out there. Yes, that's super helpful, isn't it? Just go and just do the thing that's making you extremely anxious. Yeah, well, when I saw, it wasn't the psychologist who diagnosed me, but kind of like the route to diagnosis, there's a psychologist who works in the GP's office. Useless. But basically, like, they deal with people with burnout, and like that's basically it. I also have these in other colors, by the way. I say that like I have them for sale. Like, I have these in a selection. This is like we're watching QVC now, isn't it? This one's very nice. What was I talking about? Oh yes, the psychologist telling you to just get on with things. Out of all the things that I said I felt about autism, the thing that she picked up was on, you struggle to make phone calls. Well, that is very problematic, because as your child gets older, you will need to do those things. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, hold on, he has a father as well. Like, as the mother, why is it my sole responsibility to make phone calls like this? But she basically treated me like this was a huge problem. Not being able to make a phone call was unacceptable, and I would need to grow out of it. And well, I'm very glad that she didn't diagnose me, because she clearly did not understand anything about autism. But that's a little anecdote about that. Rainbow Elemental says, I'm just like that in Dutch, just exactly how you describe. I have Dutch days and English days, yes. And some days I am neither. Some days I can't speak English either. And I feel like I've warmed up a bit now, but I'm still struggling with my words today, as I say. I don't know what is that just tiredness or stress, or I don't know why I would be. I mean, I look tired. I look tired today. Old days and young days. Right, have we... Now I'm reached the end of the chat. Does that mean I've actually reached the end of your chat, or is it just going to flick upwards? No, I've reached the end of the chat, I think. QVC, yes. Oh, great. I finally caught up to all of you people. We are in real time. Hi from Sweden. Hello. Hi. What do you say in Swedish? Hi. I think. Yeah. We can all do some Hi Sweden. Yeah. This is like Eurovision now, isn't it? Hey. Yes, but how do you say that? Hey. Hey. I think it is probably time. It's probably time to go, isn't it, guys? But hi from the Netherlands. Yes, this is very much like Eurovision now. 12 points. Has everyone given me a thumbs up, by the way? That would be really nice of you if you could. Problems with worms is a regular and cyclic thing. Problems with worms. Do you mean words? Yellow Flame Dancing, thanks for the chat. Hello from Colorado. Hello. It is so nice to talk to you guys in real time. It's more interactive than just doing my videos. But next week, I've got some exciting videos coming up. Next week is going to be like a fun little gift guidey sort of one. And then I think the week after that, or possibly the week after that, I'm doing one on getting an adult diagnosis of autism, like the pros and cons. Is it worth it? The process? Well, maybe not all of the process, because it's quite different, but that's something that people have been asking me for. So I hope that I can do that one justice. John says, quick question. How do you differentiate and explain your diagnoses? Well, people don't generally ask in that level of detail. I tend to be brief. You know, I try. I don't know, actually. I probably not very well. I don't think I explain them very well, apart from autism, which I'm getting pretty good at explaining. But people still don't understand. Alan was trying to be funny. Sigh. Yes. You can tell I'm getting tired now. Anyway, you can tell I'm also starting to get my snotty cold back. So, Bag of Chips says, oh, by the way, I'd love to see more vlogs from you. Vlogs. I'm terrible at vlogging. I am really terrible because I just, I don't know what to say. Be like, well, I've woken up this morning and I'm going to brush my teeth now. You know, I don't know how to vlog. Maybe I should look up how to vlog, and maybe I'll do like a Christmas one or something. I don't know. It'll be extra though. It won't be instead of content, because I've got some exciting content. So there's still 49 of you here. Oh my goodness, that is really nice. Yellow Flame Dancing says, I just say my brain is wired differently. I understand things in a different way. I think that's a really good way of describing autism, neurodiversity in general. It's just my brain is wired differently. I mean, I had a family member who apparently, after my diagnosis, was just like, she's sick. Like, people don't get it. People do not get it. And that's why I have this channel, to try and make a good resource so people don't need to keep asking me these questions. So, goodness, it's been an hour and a half. Goodness me. I'm not feeling very sweary today. Normally I'm sweary, but I'm not today. Annalou says, I don't have German or English days. I only have me days in which I hope I could take specific thoughts and transfer them to someone else. I would love to just be able to plug my brain into somebody else and not deal with this whole speech thing. So I hope this was useful. I hope it was informative. I feel like I was just talking about a load of things that I am not an expert in, which I suppose is like the whole channel. But yeah, you did ask for it, so I delivered. Welteriste 9. That is the intimate autistic fantasy, I think. I think we were talking about plugging our brains directly in. That's true. Having that would be like very, very intimate experience with another person. And it would be so much better than like poetry or anything like that. Really just understanding what the hell somebody's talking about. So, oh, hey, it's just, my son has an, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm getting so tired now. Has an autism diagnosis, and I have a diagnosis of OCD. Also wonder if I'm on the spectrum since my son's diagnosis, and if I have managed to mask my way through life undiagnosed. Well, it is possible. I managed 33 years of masking, and if you want, I have a video on that which is called Could You Be Autistic? And it's me going like, ooh, like that on the thumbnail. So go check out my channel and have a look for that video, because it might be helpful. So I will see you guys next week. I think I'm going to do a premiere, so it'll be easy because I'll be on the chat with you watching the video. It'll be nice. Does this save as a video? Yes, it does save as a video. It will be published, I think, almost instantly when I hit end. So good night, everybody. Have a great few weeks before I do my next live. I will be doing a couple in December because I just think like I'm inside all the time now. I don't want to go outside. So take care of yourselves. I hope this was helpful, and just thanks for your support. I will see you next time. Oh, I'll spin you out.